Section 4.2. What to say when you don't know specifics. There's a moment in many interviews when a question lands, and your mind goes blank. You have seen something similar before. You understand the idea. But this exact detail, you don't know. Most candidates panic at that point. They start guessing. They start talking faster. They add buzzwords, hoping nobody will notice. And very quickly, the answer loses clarity. But senior engineers handle this moment differently. They don't try to win the question. They stay calm and they think out loud. Interviews are not really tests of memory. They are tests of how you reason when the path is not obvious. The biggest trap is pretending that you know. Interviewers have seen too many systems and too many outages to be fooled. When you bluff, you lose trust, you lose control, and eventually the story collapses. The rest of the conversation becomes uncomfortable. So instead of pretending, acknowledge it and move forward. A simple sentence changes everything. You can say, "I'm not completely sure about that part, but here is how I would think about it." In one moment, you show honesty, maturity, and the ability to reason. You are no longer guessing. You are thinking like an engineer. Thinking out loud does not mean rambling. It means walking through your logic slowly. First, you restate the problem in your own words. Then you consider possible directions. Then you explain which path you would try first and why. For example, you might say, "I'm not fully sure about the exact setting. My instinct would be to see how the service behaves under load. If the bottleneck is CPU, I would look at horizontal scaling. If the issue is latency between components, I would start thinking about caching or queues. First I would measure, then I would experiment." You are not pretending. You are showing judgment. Sometimes the best thing you can do is to ask a calm, focused question. For example, do we know whether this system is more sensitive to latency or to consistency? At that moment, the interview stops feeling like an interrogation. It becomes a conversation. You show that you do not jump into solutions without context. That is exactly what experienced engineers avoid in real life. Of course, there will be questions where you know nothing, not even a starting point, and that is fine, if you handle it well. You might say, "I haven't worked directly with that technology yet, but the pattern feels familiar. I would start by reading the documentation, setting up a small test, and comparing behavior in different scenarios." You do not apologize. You do not collapse. You simply show that you know how to learn on purpose. When you answer like this, you send a quiet signal. You are saying, "I care more about being correct than about looking impressive. I would rather understand the problem than pretend I already know the answer." That is real confidence. And here is the beautiful part. You no longer need to know everything. You only need to show that when you don't know, you still think clearly, you ask good questions, and you move logically forward. That is exactly how real engineering works, outside the interview room. Once you know how to think out loud, a new challenge appears: explaining systems clearly. Next, we'll see how to describe cloud architecture, even without diagrams. End of 4.2.